Welcome to Annunciation Radio's Faith with Reasons, the program that examines what the church teaches and why. Faith with Reasons.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Faith with Reasons. Ron Finn along with Shane Stanfield. Hi, Shane.
Hi, Ron. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I love this 11-degree weather.
I was just going to say, it's fairly balmy today.
A little bit. And gonna get some more snow on the way, and just winter behaving like winter, which is something we're not used to around here.
Snow is the icing on the cake, you know.
Yeah, I guess so. Literally and figuratively both. I like that.
Sure.
Show number 477.
Nice.
On this 17th day of January. What's happening in Shane's world?
Oh, everything. Where do I start? But, it's all good.
One foot in front of the other?
Absolutely.
That'll work.
Or one finger in front of the other.
Yeah. I kind of have to do that.
Yeah.
My goodness. And we've got a wonderful guest on the phone in studio with us. He feels like he's sitting right here with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to have to prop up a picture of Matthew Archbold and place it, at the guest mic.
We need one of those cardboard cutouts.
Oh, yeah.
I think that would be nice. A life-size image of Matt right here.
Hey, I'll bet he carries one in his trunk. Well,
it is show number 477, so we have to have a way to celebrate, and I think Matt is the perfect celebration.
Exactly. We get the opportunity to talk with Matt every Thursday morning, which we will tomorrow morning on Morning Offering, and we delve into a lot to Creative Minority Report because there's always some interesting stories on there. But the reason for that is he's a real interesting guy.
He tends to be that way once in a while.
He is an author, and he is a blogger, which has nothing to do with dancing, by the way.
No.
He's a blogger, not a clogger.
Clogger. Oh, okay. Clogger, yeah.
He's a columnist and a Catholic father of 5, a busy household, and when he's not running people all over the place and so forth, he's an award-winning journalist. And, of course, he's the author of best-selling pro-life novel American Antigone, which I really encourage people, especially now, during this month, and with the March for Life coming up, to revisit American Antigone and read up on that. So, and if you haven't yet, boy, you got to get it. And also, and I love to go back to his Faith Under Fire book as well, because it has it's filled with dramatic stories of individuals who have displayed some real Christian courage.
Nice.
So that's good to have. And, of course, creator of the web resource Creative Minority Report, spotlighting current topics and news stories. And what's great about that is he presents some pretty heady stories and topics, serious things, but he keeps a sense of humor throughout. So, and that is a welcome relief.
And some of the stuff is just, it needs a little sense of humor behind it because it's just that awful.
Yeah, exactly.
The news is just, the world was upside down today. So I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that.
I certainly hope so, yeah. So, Matthew Archbold, welcome to Faith with Reasons. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I have to tell you what I'm looking at as I'm listening to you guys. And, anytime you guys speak, my gosh, do I listen.
Oh, boy.
But I'm looking out my window.
You're doing the crossword puzzle, aren't you?
It's getting thick.
No, I'm looking out my window. This is just, so the neighbors, she's a grandmother, and she has her 2 grandkids today. And they're small. They're like 3 and 4, okay? And they are sledding down the hill. They have no control over these sleds. They are just literally like sacks of potatoes laying on the sled. And it comes down the hill, and every single time they crash into my house.
Hopefully not head first.
Oh my!
And then the little girl cries, and the older brother picks her up and then pulls the sled back up, and then they get back in the sled, and they come down, they crash into my house, and the little girl cries.
Oh. And somehow that's your fault, I think.
Right. I'm going to get lawyers, and I'm going to have my homeowners insurance go way up just because I'm admitting to the horrors going on in my own backyard.
Yes, Mr. Archbold, we're on Detective Smith. I'm wondering why you're rinsing blood off the side of your house.
Yeah. So if you hear any horrible noises coming from this end of the line, you'll know what's going on.
I can just picture that. That is so funny.
The occasional thud.
It's nice to be able to go sledding without leaving your own property. Well, hardly leaving your property.
Well, that's the thing. It's not even sledding. It's not even snow at this point. It is truly just ice.
Oh,
you know, so when these kids just get on it, they weigh 30 pounds. They are just sliding across this thing. We could take a Zamboni and just speed it up for them. You know?
There you go.
That's great.
Meantime, every bed sheet in the house and pillow is stacked against the side of Matthew's.
That's right. I'll just line up all my mattresses from all the kids just to protect these neighbors.
Yeah, right. So other than that, how are you enjoying your winter weather?
Yeah, doing well. Yesterday, I share a driveway with my neighbor. Okay, so we have one driveway. It comes up near the street. It's rather thin, but then it widens out near both of our houses. But we essentially share the driveway, and we never have any trouble whatsoever. So sometime during the morning, I guess some kids in the neighborhood came by and asked him, "Do you want us to shovel your driveway?" And he gave them whatever money it was, and they did. But literally, they shoveled half the driveway.
Oh.
And, I came out. Now, I don't know this. Now, I think I'm looking at this driveway like, oh, my goodness, did I do something to offend my neighbor? Like, I thought we got along, because it was dead straight line. It was just, like, Matt, you're on your own. So I start shoveling, and I'm like, And then he comes running out, and he says, he's like, dude, I paid kids to do it, and I didn't even look. I just paid them without looking. I am so sorry. I'll come out and help you. And I didn't make them, but I did borrow a snowblower, which made things a little easier.
Oh, yeah.
I'll say that. Yeah.
Have you gotten a lot of snow?
But here's the thing. He paid a kid, he said $20 to do it. I borrowed his snowblower. He has a snowblower.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, right.
And that's why you buy a snowblower, so you don't have to work too hard.
That's right. And that's why you keep it in your shed, because you're going to pay neighbors' kids to do it anyway.
That's right. That's right.
I didn't understand it. But yeah, the snow has been a little crazy. My kids have had off from school a lot, so they've been enjoying that. So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of snow, or was it what we ended up getting was more that real thick, heavy, wet stuff, and it came down so hard and fast, and then it went below zero, and all that froze. So it was very delightful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the problem we're running, because I walk the dog at night a lot, and it's just slipping and sliding, and at some point, I don't know what the age is exactly that when it happens, but falling on the ground at one certain age is funny. It's like, ha, I fell. And then all of a sudden, there's that other age. It's just a few months past it where you're like, oh, boy, I really hope I don't fall. Like, oh, boy, this will be bad.
Yeah, that's right.
I think I'm approaching that age.
Yeah, I'm definitely there. I had a little chat with the dog about, now 4, 5, 6 days ago, saying, now, look, it's too cold and it's too icy. We're not going for a walk. So you're just going to get your treats now, and we'll call it a day. We'll call it a night.
That's bribery. Just
right.
lay down, and we'll do the walking later.
Right, and then the dog exploded, sending fecal matter all over the living room 2 days later.
Yeah.
Small price to pay for saving a fractured hip. You know what I'm saying? Oh, man. All right, a lot of stuff in the news taking place right now. Of course, what was it, 14 degrees below zero or something in Iowa, in Des Moines, on that big caucus day the other day, and lo and behold, Donald J. Trump comes out with this landslide. I don't know what percentage of the voters were there, but well over half of them that came voted for him, right? So a little surprised, I think, that Nikki Haley got edged out by Ron DeSantis. Were you? Did you watch any of that stuff, Matthew?
I did, and I try not to get involved in the horse race on the daily, just because I really do believe it. It sucks your soul from you, watching it on the daily. But on a night like that, you kind of have to check in. Just it's like taking the temperature of the country and seeing if we're running a fever. It turns out we have like a scarlet fever kind of fever. This is the kind that killed Beth from Little Women. It's just so bad. It's just so bad. We're literally talking about Trump or Biden, and this is what we're talking about now. And it's just I don't know where we how this comes out okay. I got to be honest.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating. I mean, I don't think anybody expected that, and of course, what do we expect from politicians, right? I mean, I guess nothing surprises us anymore.
Nikki Haley is an interesting one in that she seems like a rerun. Like she's like a candidate that ran in the early 90s or something. And, and it just seems like we've taken a character out of the early 90s Republican Party and put it in now. To me, she just seems beside the fact, because all the issues that I talk to people about, that people are concerned about, you talk about Roe v. Wade being put aside, and now the fractiousness that we're seeing in this country over the issue of life. We're talking about gender, these basic culture issues that if we can't decide on a definition of life, we can't decide on a definition of man or woman, we cannot survive as a country. So when I see, candidates just talking like everything is okay, and we're just talking about how to tweak inflation and how to do this and that. No. We have very, very central issues to deal with. There was a rapper, and he's a podcaster, Zuby. I don't know if you have heard of him.
I've got his greatest hits package.
That's funny. but
I got it for Christmas, to be honest.
But he's very, very popular. And he said, I don't think I've ever said this publicly and directly, but I think the West is in real trouble if it loses Christianity. Explaining it would take an entire book, but I've thought a lot about it. It's like removing the foundation of a building and then, trying to topple the building and hoping that it just stays up. And then Elon Musk, the CEO of X, Twitter, he just chimed in and said, "You're probably right." Now, to me and you, we realize we've talked about this for years.
Yeah.
This cultural game of Jenga that we're playing. Don't break the ice. Where we just keep removing such important foundational issues, but somehow we expect our civilization to keep standing. It won't.
It can't.
It can't. It can't. If we no longer accept the foundations of Christianity as the beliefs that we all share, what are we talking about here? And right now, we're more like the Hatfields and the McCoys than we are anything else, than the Waltons. I'll tell you that. We can't decide. We can't agree on anything. Like I said, we can't agree on what is a human life. We can't agree on what is a woman. We can't agree on what a border means. When you have that kind of inability to even interact because we can't agree on the words, it's like the Tower of Babel all over again.
Yeah.
We cannot even communicate with one another, and that's the thing. So when I hear Nikki Haley trying to nuance her position on trans issues, and take kind of a libertarian approach, it just seems so tired, so beside the point. And I tire of that. We're past that. We are in need of major course correction. And the more we're talking about tweaking this GDP number and lowering inflation rate, no, that's not going to get it done in my book.
Yeah, I think we're beyond that. But, I want to take a couple of things you just said and, couple them together, because you said earlier that she seemed to you as a repeat of a 90s politician. And I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. But couple that with what you just said about her taking more of a libertarian approach, she's pandering. And this is my opinion. She doesn't have I don't believe that she really, and there's a lot of people at the, that are very involved in daily politics that have said this. So I'm basically repeating what they've said, but she doesn't have any personal conviction, or at least she's never demonstrated it, which if you think about it, that's the typical 90s politician. They say what you want to hear, they garner the votes, and they go in and they do what they want. And this country has paid the price for that for the longest of time, and it's allowed this thing, this establishment to take root in this country, and it literally has been destroying us. And we've been asleep. We've been very, very asleep to some very, very critical things. Like you said earlier, the West, the West can't stand. Western culture is on the way out. And for those people that don't see this, it's too late. It really is too late. I personally had hopes for Vivek in this. I knew he really didn't have a chance, but out of everybody, he seemed to grasp the problem, almost a spiritual problem. And at times he's come out and been quite spiritual with regard to this, at least little things that I've heard. But, he's the one that is most vocal about this wokeness. And this I think, is a cancer in our culture. And quite frankly, we've had a number of authors on this program recently, just the last few months that have talked about the problem with wokeness. And it's neo-Marxism, and it's totally un-American. But the people that are pushing this sort of thing don't have a care about this country. They want the United States reimagined in their own image, whatever that is. God help us all.
Well, that's exactly it. Neo-Marxist is exactly the right thing, because neo-Marxism is all about identifying the other.
Yeah.
It's class warfare.
Yep.
And, we're not necessarily doing it by rich versus the poor, which is really what Marx, it's, the landowners versus the non-landowners, the kulaks. We're doing it by race. We're doing it by, and let's be honest, you look at the media right now, you look at the political establishment, who is being targeted here as the next kulak? Who is the enemy of the people? It's the Christians.
Yeah.
The Christians who actually take Christianity seriously.
Yes.
They've gone through so many different words for us. It used to be fundamentals. It was, Christian nationalism. It's whatever word, rad trad is a big one now. But we're the ones getting investigated now. Mm-hmm. And, when our pro-life centers get vandalized or burned to the ground, nothing happens at all. But yet we have FBI agents, sitting in the rows of Catholic churches, monitoring us. I mean, we're getting to we're not getting to a point. We're here. Mm-hmm. They've chosen the enemy, and it is clear. And now we have to make our case to the people, and this is what it's all been about. We have to make our case to the people that we are not only not the enemy of the people, Christ, but that Christ is the only hope for the people.
Yes,
and I've been intrigued because every once in a while you see someone is becoming Christian and you didn't expect it, and then they're saying, oh, there's something here, like this rapper, and then Elon Musk, who's not a Christian, in fact holds many really crazy thoughts about transhumanism that we can talk about in the future, but even he is starting to see this.
Yes,
that we cannot go keep continuing just pulling out the foundations of our culture and not expect it to come crashing down. But, and at some point, this is going to come crashing down unless something drastic happens. And then it'll be upon us to pick up the pieces, because then the people are going to look to some others to pick up the pieces that we once had. And we'll have to decide which pieces we need and which pieces we don't. And we at least have a game plan. The fight over which pieces belong and which don't, we saw how that worked out in the French Revolution.
Oh, yeah.
a lot of people got guillotined because they thought, oh, this piece is more important than this piece. Oh, you think so? Well, my blade says otherwise. And that's the only way that ends. That is truly the only way that ends. But we have to be faithful Christians, and it's I believe it's going, barring supernatural intervention. I remember in one of the Monty Python movies, God would just open up the clouds and start yelling at everyone. Barring something like that, which I would be all for.
Oh,
God, if you're listening, open up the clouds. We need it. We need a good scolding right now.
Sounds
Don't
a lot like George Burns, doesn't it? Yeah.
That's right. That's right. But that's what we need right now. But barring that, I think we're in for a long, very dark haul.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just thinking about what took place, and I don't think it took place today, but it was recent enough that I saw it for the first time today. The new president of Argentina, is it Milei? I don't know how to pronounce his name.
I haven't gotten past his sideburns. I know.
Oh yeah. but he is very outspoken as far as classic libertarianism. He's I believe educated as an economist, and he is property rights, free capital market, you name it. He is just the man's on fire. And I was blown away by the fact, and you want to talk about things being upside down in the news lately, but he was actually invited to speak at the World Economic Forum. And this just happened in the last couple of days because it was the 2020 forum, and he was introduced by none other than Klaus Schwab. And
wow.
And he spent his 20 minutes blasting everything the WEF stands for. Blasted them, that globalism is not the key. Individual property rights are, everything that I just mentioned about. I was like, did they not know what he would do, when he would speak? But they hosted him, and I think that's hopeful. When I think it's hopeful when you've got people like Bill Maher and Joe Rogan and these people that have been, quite progressive or liberal in their views in the past. They're starting to wake up, and I just know I do find hope in that, and I don't personally put anything into any of these politicians that that they're going to be anything that's going to save us, because what you said is absolutely true. We need Jesus Christ, and people need to get back to the basics. And that's gonna be how we get out of this. But it's hopeful now that you've got so many people that you would least expect to be as vocal as they are.
Well, a couple of things. If I'm the president of Argentina and I gave that speech, I'm telling you now, someone else is starting my car for me.
Oh,
they'd be like, "Thanks for coming, Matt. Get in the car." Nope, I'm going to take the bus.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt.
That's like that general that took the free trip from Putin. Like, oh, what happened? Oh, yeah, we ran out of gas. Sorry about that.
Matt Archbold, our guest on Faith with Reasons here at Annunciation Radio, and we always like to get him on an occasional Wednesday just to scoop everything we're going to ask him about on Thursday mornings on Morning Offering. But there's always so much to talk about. Now, Matt, you have been at the March for Life in Washington, D.C., I know, on more than one occasion, and it's in this, post-Roe generation. Still a lot of folks going. I know from our diocese, our own Bishop Daniel Thomas is making the trip, and, of course, we have students and others going on buses that leave really on Thursday morning. And they're looking at, I think, some snow and rain mix there. It should be warmer than here, but I don't know how the weather's going to affect things out there. But any thoughts on this year's March for Life in Washington, D.C.?
Well, okay, I've gone many, many times. I mean, almost every year, except, there were a couple times the kids had different things and I couldn't do it. But I've gone most of the years. I do... and I probably will attend this year as well. because my daughter's going to be going with her pro-life group at her school.
Cool.
So, but the concern is we're fighting a war on the wrong battleground. Going in front of the Supreme Court is not where this battle is anymore. Mm-hmm. It's literally in our backyards. Now, do I think it's a good thing for us all to get together and have, meetings and march and give each other hope, just to be able to see all of us in one space marching down Washington? Sure. I do think there's benefit to that, but I also think it's more important that we do that everywhere in our town and in our state, because that's where the battle is. And my goodness, you guys, have shown where the battle really is. Ohio has taken some terrible beatings on this issue. And, and it's because I really do believe we haven't switched gears. For 50 years, we were so focused on getting this national horror changed. And that's what it was. It was a horror. Mm-hmm. And miraculously, it was achieved. I didn't believe. I always believed one day it would happen, but I never believed it would happen as quickly as it did, like the way it did. And I was thrilled. But now we have to change gears, and we have to battle this where the battle is, and that's in each of our states.
Yes. Now, are you saying, though, that it's not very advantageous? And I know you support the fact that everybody's getting together, but you seem to be alluding to the fact that maybe it shouldn't be in Washington. Well,
that is my thought, and that is only with the caveat that people only have a certain, they have a finite amount of energy, will, and effort. Right, and if you call them out to do the march in D.C., does that mean that they're not going to have time to make an effort to do something in their own hometown, to do something in their own state? And people only do have a finite amount of willpower and energy and time to do these things. So I think it's wonderful. Now I'm committed, and I'm going to do both, and I've been trying to do everything I can, but I think focusing more on local is what we need to do.
Amen. And of course, there's so much more that we want to cover here. It's amazing how quickly this first half hour has gone by. Matthew Archbold, creator of Creative Minority Report, and some wonderful readings, both in his blogs, articles, and in his books. We're going to take a little break. We'll be right back. Come see what's new at the St. Vincent de Paul Toledo Thrift Store on West Sylvania between Secor and Douglas.
St. Vincent de Paul, where we have an abundance of items that go all the way from vintage to trendy. Come check us out from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 10 a.m. until 5 p.m. on Saturdays.
The St. Vincent de Paul Toledo Thrift Store, West Sylvania Avenue between Secor and Douglas. Open Monday through Friday, 10 to 6, Saturday, 10 to 5.
Jesus Christ established one church with one set of beliefs, as stated in Ephesians 4, verse 5. He did not establish numerous churches with contradictory beliefs. To see which is the true church, we must look for the one that has an unbroken historical link to the church of the New Testament. John Henry Newman, in his 1844 book, An Essay on the Development of Christian Doctrine, traced Catholic beliefs backwards century by century to the New Testament times. He discovered a real continuity of beliefs, that the Catholic Church existed from day one of church history, that it is in fact the church established by Christ. Newman was not a Catholic when he started the book, but his research convinced him of the truth of the Catholic faith, and as the book was finished, he converted. Examining the truths of the Catholic faith, this is faithforensics.org.
There was no single event. It was more gradual. Eventually you don't go one Sunday and then you don't go 2 Sundays in a row. Then went through a divorce and ended up being a single parent. If I didn't have church or God, I would be back at that lonely stage, that trouble stage. Whenever you get anxious and worry about things, you just know that Jesus has it under control.
If you've been away from the Catholic Church for any reason, visit CatholicsComeHome.org.
Now, back to Faith with Reasons here on Annunciation Radio.
Hey, welcome back here. Shane Stanfield with Ron Vinn, and today we're blessed to have Matthew Archbold, our regular author, blogger, columnist, and Catholic Father of Five guest. Of course, you know him as a award-winning journalist who's heard every Thursday here on Annunciation Radio's morning offering program.
That's court-ordered.
Court-ordered, yeah. And of course, he's also an author of a best-selling pro-life novel. That's American Antigone, and that's important now. We got March for Life coming up soon. So Ron stated last half hour, that might be a book you might want to go out and read. Also an author of Faith Under Fire, Dramatic Stories of Christian Courage. And he's also the creator of the web resource, Creative Minority Report, and he spotlights current topics and news stories, and he puts in a little sense of humor. And I thought I'd highlight something to start this half hour off with on your page, and this happens to do with what I just talked about, you being the Thursday guest on the morning offering program, and that's what you had to write about last week's appearance. And your simple statement here made me chuckle, because you say, "Yeah, I solved pretty much all the world's problems in a 10-minute segment. Yeah, I'm cool like that."
He does too.
So I would kind of like to think of this, this time with that you're spending with us is your primer for tomorrow's program. So maybe we can kick it off that way.
Yeah, I always that Thursday mornings after I do the show, I always first thing I say is like, "I'm empty, guys. That's it. I'm all out. I got no ideas anymore. You guys are gonna have to carry the show this time."
Which is tough to do.
I know what dire straits we're in when Ron and Dave have to carry the show. I mean, my gosh.
I'm so thankful that we record your segment and then we play it back about 4 times during the course of the rest of the program.
So let's highlight a story that you've got on here, which I think is worth talking about here, and it's not your usual thing, although you've done this before, I've seen, because again you're generally writing with about the somewhat shocking daily news, putting a little humor on here, but here you've got an amazing story about a Christian slave in America, and by the name of Robert Smalls, and maybe we could take a few minutes to talk about him.
You know what the most amazing thing about this story is that we all haven't heard of this story before.
Yeah.
Because it's mind-blowing. And it's Robert Smalls, and I started off by saying he died in the house where he was born. And, from that little snippet, you can get the idea, he lived a very small life, but nothing could be further from the truth. He was born a slave in 1839 to a South Carolina plantation owner named Henry McKee. His mother, who was a slave, delivered him in a cabin behind the main house. And she was a devout Christian. She passed her faith on to Robert. And then, so I'm sorry, someone was just calling me, and I've told everyone.
That sounded like a 3-year-old hitting the side of the house to me.
That's really funny. No, I think she's unconscious by this point. I don't think she's doing it anymore. Last I saw, they were dragging her up the hill, so I think we're okay.
Okay.
So he was very bright, and Henry McKee saw in him a lot of great qualities. So he profited off of him by actually putting him out into the workforce outside of the plantation, so he would get even more money for him. So they hired him out in Charleston, where he worked as a laborer, and he was found on the docks at Charleston doing work there. And then he became a sailor, so he could then sail boats. And he became a pilot, a wheelman, and steered his boat through the very busy Charleston harbor. And this is all as a very young man. So he soon married another slave named Hannah Jones, and they had children together. And when the Civil War started, Smalls was assigned to steer a boat for the Confederacy, a Confederate military transport so the North had created a blockade, but Robert Smalls was so good at his job that he could navigate through at night, and no one would see him. So he was like a go-to pilot to get military transport and arms through the blockade. So in 1862, the Plantier, which was the boat, was delivering guns and ammunition. All the Confederacies, the troops, left the boat to go get a bite to eat. It was the first time he'd been really left alone. He grabbed his wife, his children, all of his friends, every slave that he could find that he trusted. He brought them, and they got all dressed up as workers on the boat for the Confederacy. And his wife was very worried and finally said, "It is a risk, dear, but you and I and our little ones must be free. I will go. For where you die, I will die."
Wow.
They grabbed them all. Smalls put on the captain's uniform and wore a straw hat similar to the captain's, and he even waved at checkpoints through the Confederate checkpoints as he passed. But they were so used to seeing him that they didn't think anything of it. So as soon as he got through the Confederate lines, he turned the ship over to the Union Navy. And all those slaves that he had brought with him were freed immediately because they were now in the North.
Wow!
And then that's a movie, a great story in and of itself.
Yeah, or a miniseries, right?
Yeah, but then he became a very wealthy, well-to-do businessman, and even a congressman serving as a Republican. And reportedly, he did a lot of great things. As he got older, this is amazing, he returned to South Carolina and purchased the McKee plantation where he was born, where he had been a slave. One night, Mrs. McKee, who was living elsewhere, suffered from dementia. She suffered terribly from dementia. She escaped where she was and walked back to her plantation. And this kept happening because of her dementia. She would just keep appearing at the door, forgetting that she no longer lived there.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Smalls took her in and cared for her the rest of her days.
Wow.
He also took in her children who were destitute. He took them into his house and helped them and treated them like family.
Wow.
And he said that his Christian faith implored him to do that. Now, this is a man who lived out his Christian beliefs fully. He freed slaves. He cared for those who persecuted him in the worst possible way. He is one of the greatest examples I've ever read of a Christian and an American. And isn't it strange that we've never even heard of this man?
It is strange. It is strange. Now I have my theories why. Why a story like this would be kept silent, and I don't need to get into them, but yeah, I mean, and I think it speaks loudly as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's a shame because this is a good news story.
And it also is because the answer to this, to the persecution and the evil this man had, was love. All along, it was love, it was forgiveness, it was his Christian faith. And is that the answer that you see promulgated by today's news or our elites? No. We have to push back, we have to fight back, we have to get what's coming to us. It's no longer talking about love, forgiveness, or faith. And I think it's because they don't, as sad as it seems to say, they don't like his answer. They don't like his remedy.
Well, I'll just come right out and say it. He doesn't fit the narrative.
Right. No, that's the best way to say it, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why you don't hear a story like this, because he doesn't fit the narrative. I mean, and it's such a good news story. But you're right. It's a good news story because it is a story of love.
exactly, and those are the best stories.
Wow.
You know the stories that end in love and forgiveness. That's what we're called to do, and you know, and things like this. Every time Jesus wanted to really teach us something, what did he do? He told us a story. He understood. He knew the power of story. You know, obviously, he knows how we're wired. He did the wiring.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you know, so I think our elites know the power a story like this has, and that's why, you know, you only get it from, you know, stupid bloggers like me, rather than you know, being pushed forward in the New York Times.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know, there's been such a promulgation of good Christian movies that have done very well at the box office, which has emboldened filmmakers to make more. This would be a great story to set on someone like that that could turn this into I think a very successful movie.
I actually, when you said like a miniseries, I think you said that, Ron, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that it has because it has so many different layers. You know, it's hard to go through. I think it would make a fantastic miniseries. You know, to go through this man's life, you would think it would be so inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
But
now you have a picture of him on the Creative Minority Report website. Is that his actual picture?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Wow. So I'm trying to think what actor would play that role.
So when did he die? Do you happen to know?
It was late 1800s. That's all I got right now.
Yeah.
He died right there at the end of his life, I know. I'm not sure.
That's very funny.
That's very profound.
Thank you very much. But it is an amazing story. And as you say, as we learn from parables and the things that Jesus communicated, the way he communicated, we learn so much from this just in the actions of this amazing man.
And I think, you know, that is what we need right now. And that's what, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, that was a very, very dark time in America. I mean, exceedingly dark. And to answer that darkness with love, I think of the decision to let the family in who persecuted you, who sold you, you know, and treat them with love and forgiveness. My gosh, it really does make you know, like, if we were all just allow Christ's love to fill our hearts, what a wonderful world that this would truly be. And it breaks my heart that we fall so short of it, and we all do. But, you know, it seems to me that this guy hit a lot of the big marks.
Oh, he certainly did. But, you know, getting back to what I said earlier about he doesn't fit the narrative, you hinted to that previously when you said, you know, really what we're pushing today is just the opposite of love. It's just this victimhood. You know, you've got the oppressed and you've got the oppressors. And that is the total opposite of what this story, the story shows. It's what it demonstrates.
I remember when Spielberg made that movie about Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
And he said in an interview once that, you know, he kind of had to go out of his way to kind of massage the point that he was a Republican because he essentially didn't like the fact, you know, so he kind of, you know, circumnavigated that because, you know, he felt the Republicans may have been the good guys back then, but the Democrats are the good guys now. But, you know, when we're willing to toss out facts and truth, you know, that says more about us than it does about the world.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we do. It's the first thing that you jettison is truth, or you twist it, or distort it in such a way. It's a shame.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at I'm looking at my page here, and the story right next to it is the American Academy of Pediatrics says not chemically castrating your confused child is child abuse. And
by the way, your picture or your little your little image there is it says it all.
Yeah. Well, that's an actual picture of a real doctor. I don't know what you want from me.
Well, but I tell you what, if that's what we have is doctors on the American Academy of Pediatrics, they would look like that. I mean, just to say something like that, you've got to be nuts. Seriously. I mean, I don't get it. So how do they justify this? What do you say here in the article? This just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it really topples on its head. The first do no harm, which is supposed to be their first oath, the Hippocratic oath.
Their oath, yeah.
And that gets tossed out the window. And it gets tossed out the window because once the government becomes so powerful, once the state gets to dictate and they get to decide who gets grants and who gets this and who gets that, then you have to jump when they say jump. And so when the left says, you have to get on board on this very profitable train, they do it. And, so the first do no harm, the oath goes out the window when it comes time for the check cashing.
Yeah.
And that is sadly what so much of it comes down to. And there's really nothing you can do. Every person is going to serve their God in the end. So, I always say you might as well make it the real God because you're going to end up serving something. And, when you make money your God or power your God or prestige your God or ratings or clicks, you're going to go off the rails. You're going to invite misery into your life. If you're going to serve a God, no matter what you do, you might as well make it the real one.
Amen. Amen. Matt Archbold, our guest on Faith with Reasons. And if you want to drop by and see him, he's that third house on the right with the dents in the side of the house from the neighbor kids sliding on the ice inside of your house. But really, the best way to visit Matt is to go to creativeandorderreport.com.
Absolutely, yeah.
So much on there, and it's you cover the world. It's kind of like you got to have the Sherwin-Williams logo on there because you cover the world.
What is the old thing? You give me 22 minutes, I'll give you the world?
Yeah, that's
it. So what's this deal about AI and people using AI to talk to the dead? I mean, where did that come from?
That gets a little scary, doesn't it?
It sure does.
So it's weird.
Essentially what they're saying, okay, is if I were to want to talk to Shane, but I had no access to Shane, I could download, a bunch of say I got 400 shows, I'll download them and download everything Shane ever said into an AI, okay?
Oh, that'd be trouble.
On the air, right, right, exactly. And then. So then the AI would essentially get a read on your personality and then would respond in the way that Shane would. So essentially it's saying what we'll do is when people die, you essentially will send all the home movies you have, all the recordings, any stories you have about that person, and this AI company would then create that person. And you could interact with that person even after their death.
That's just creepy.
Oh, it's so creepy because the basic thing is one, it stops, it freezes the mourning that you have to go through when you lose someone.
Yeah,
right. It stunts it, and that's a dangerous thing. And you have to go through grief. You have to go through all those stages when dealing with death. And the other thing is that gives who's ever in charge of that AI an awful lot of power over you.
Yeah. Oh, unimaginable power.
And the other thing is, I always say this: if you call out into the darkness, something will answer you.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
And something will answer you. God answers in His own time. The devil shows up when you ask him to, exactly when you ask him to, because he wants to. And, and if you keep, looking for answers down that road, from dead relatives, you will get sucked down a very dark path, and that's a scary place. And look, that's where we're going. It used to be, when we would get on shows like this, when I first started doing this, so much of what we talked about was we would talk about the slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now that seems so quaint, doesn't it? Like we would be arguing about the slippery slope because we're in such free fall right now.
That's right.
The only thing we're all talking about is when are we going to hit bottom? When are we going to hear the thud? When are we going to get that bone crunching thud at the bottom? Because
like the kids hitting your house.
Slope. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was very funny.
That's the bone-crunching thud. But, the church teaches against participating in seances. How is this any different? I'm sitting here thinking about this, and, you really have the potential to re-image the person. I know AI is going to try to mimic based on recordings and videos and maybe things that the person did or how they acted in their lives. But there's a very good chance that person is going to be re-imaged into something that they weren't. And you're not really going to know that that's taking place because AI already does and has been proven to do such a great job that parents are scammed because their children call them and it's an AI recording. They can't tell the voice of the AI from their own family members, their own children. And so that's really what you're making use of here.
Yeah, because you're essentially going to say, this AI, the thing they say about the AI is it evolves.
Yeah.
It thinks, it has views. Well, the fact is you're not even talking to a recreation of the person that you're missing. You're talking to an AI evolving.
Yep.
Of what was put in. And it's also, let's be honest, it's also mixed in with something that the creators want and the creators of the AI, messages that they want to get across.
Yeah.
And, it's hitting people in their most vulnerable space.
Yeah.
And when they need help and love the most, and to come in with something like that, oh boy, my gosh, that's just so nefarious. It's chilling.
It really is. I mean, I really do prefer more old-fashioned, high-tech means of communication. I still have my magic 8-ball, and I still flip it over from time to time. I ask it questions. It always gives me a dependable answer.
Yeah.
Very early AI, I'm telling you.
And those were widely available at Spencer Gifts. Was that it?
They were.
Well, let's be honest. There were a lot of things available at Spencer Gifts that weren't a good idea.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Oh yeah.
So, Matthew, last time we talked, you were in the throes of writing a new book. We've talked, of course, about. I think I've even asked you to write an update on the Stories of Christian Courage, the Faith Under Fire. Maybe do a volume 2. And of course, you wrote that pro-life novel, which is very powerful, American Antigone. But you've been working on a different project now, haven't you? How's that going?
I have, and it comes from essentially it would be a series if it takes off. It's the Midnight Mystery Club. So essentially, it takes off from a group called the Inklings, which had notables such as C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, and Charles Williams and Owen Barfield, and they would meet at a bar and they would go over their readings and read to each other, and they honed each other's stuff. So at the time, Tolkien and Lewis especially, and Charles Williams pointedly as well, they did a lot of science fiction. They did a lot of C.S. Lewis, of course, has a space trilogy, and J.R.R. Tolkien has his fantasy epic. They did that intentionally. That was not a mistake. That was an attempt to reinsert the Christian mind view, the Christian worldview, into those genres again. Space travel and fantasy and supernatural And, Tolkien and Lewis often tried to get each other to do a time travel story. Tolkien had a couple of stops and starts. C.S. Lewis famously wrote The Dark Tower, but never completed it. But it's about 100 pages or something like that. So there's a lot there. So I had the thought that a very noble goal, and I think an enjoyable one, would be to do that same thing and really reinsert into Christian fiction some fun. And I go to the Christian fiction section of my bookstore, and it just looks like Amish people in love all over the place. And it doesn't really speak to me all that much, It just I just don't get it, and I just think we have to have our adventure stories. We have because life is truly an adventure, and it has to be fed with our Christian worldview. So I'm attempting to do that and having family adventure stories, thriller with some kind of in an adventure genre, but informing it without beating people over the head with my Christian worldview.
That sounds like fun.
Which is the correct worldview.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It probably says so in the foreword, right?
I often say, I start all of my arguments by saying, I'm right. We all know this. That's what makes me so popular at home.
Well, that's fabulous. I can't wait to see the completion of that and to get that out and about. And boy, we might have to have you back on to talk about that when the book comes out. And
remember, you guys promised me 500th episode. I'm locked in. Lock me in now.
Yeah.
You're in.
Sounds like a party.
I don't know whose book, but we're going to move them out right now. So, all right, CreativeMinorityReport.com, and you can also catch up with Matt Archbold early in the morning on Thursdays here on Annunciation Radio. Matt, thank you so much. A delightful conversation.
God bless, guys.
God bless, Matt. Thanks.
Bye.
Watch out for those kids.
Yeah.
Oh, my. Thank you for joining us this week. Next week, we are going to be praying the Psalms. We're going to learn about a good way to do that, and author James Habandrea will be our guest here on Faith with Reason.
Can't wait.